Yeah, we'll all be glad to take his money, right? How much is it worth to you to get that sandwich run? You've learned well. All right. So I get the fun task once again of getting to talk about the legal system. It's bad enough that all three of us are lawyers, but now a lawyer's going to talk to you about the role of lawyers. And of course, being lawyers, that's never simple. There's 4 components when we talk about the legal system. I'm not going to talk about legislative. I think I'll leave that to the afternoon panel. But I want to just mention civil, criminal, judicial. Some of you are not from the U.S. You may not know how complicated our legal system is. Some of you who are from the U.S. only may watch Law and Order and the other TV shows, and unfortunately that informs way too much of the public about how our legal system works. Civil lawyers, there's lots of civil lawyers when we talk about civil lawyers, and I raise that because there's opportunity there as well as the potential for gaps and problems. There are public service lawyers, legal aid, legal services lawyers, funded through the Older Americans Act, funded by the Legal Services Corporation. People like Dan's program, who as part of getting paid by the government or somebody, provide free legal help to victims or to help people from being victims. And then there's private lawyers who charge for their services. And we may now be familiar with elder law practitioners. All they do is help older people. But there's lots of other lawyers out there who are involved in issues and sometimes, unfortunately, may facilitate elder abuse, as we saw in the Brooke Astor case, who can, though, detect it, help prevent it. And those may be trust and estate lawyers, family lawyers, lots of other types of folks. There we go. Criminal law, of course, is an extraordinarily complex. We're talking about local, state, federal law enforcement, prosecutors, and that can be district attorneys, it can be, the attorney generals in some states actually prosecute cases, Medicaid fraud control units, which prosecute cases of abuse and neglect occurring in long-term care facilities. We never talk much about corrections or community corrections. I think we need to start thinking about them. There's a growing trend now in the corrections field to want to get all the older prisoners out of prison because they're expensive and require health care. And the attitude is they're old, they're safe, they're not going to cause any more harm to people. And I think then we're also looking at thinking that we don't want older offenders going into prison in the first place, which certainly has implications in family violence cases as well as elder abuse cases. And community corrections, too, have an opportunity both to not say to offenders who may be getting out of prison, oh, you ought to go work in a nursing home or an assisted living facility, or let's put you back living at home with your mother or your grandmother so we know what's going on. They then need to be able to recognize what's happening in these cases. And of course, none of that side of my slide there are really concerned with the victim. Their role is to represent the state. Victims in our criminal justice system are witnesses. They're not who's being represented, and that's another fallacy that we see all the time where people say, oh, pressing charges, the victim didn't want to press charges. It's the state that presses the charges, and we need to stop letting the system use that as an excuse for not taking these cases. Of course, judges are involved with hearing all these cases as well. We have state courts, we have federal courts, we have an array of state courts now. We're seeing growth in elder-specific and other types of specific types of courts that may handle elder protection cases, that handle domestic violence, family violence cases. Housing courts can, of course, be involved with these cases, even veterans courts, drug courts. Certainly a new trend there. Civil lawyers can be involved in preventing, detecting, or remedying elder abuse. They can screen, and we certainly at the ABA have encouraged them to do more screening in all the cases that they see, at least the elder law practitioners, and we need to expand that to others. In terms of counseling clients, trying to make them aware that elder abuse does occur, and here's how you can try and prevent it yourself. Here's how to draft a power of attorney. Here are the issues you ought to think about if you're making a power of attorney. And then if that power of attorney goes bad, and that's certainly not an area where Ron and I disagree because they do go bad sometimes, how to revoke that document. and then litigating these cases, which doesn't happen often, but does and maybe needs to happen in more than it does do. Clearly, criminal law, we're dealing with prevention as well as detection and remedy also in terms of policing, punishment, restitution, which doesn't happen very often, supervision, again, of offenders who have left the left prison or jail. Some quick initiatives, and I'm going to flip my order around here because I'm going to go from where we've seen more activity to where we've seen less activity. We have seen, largely with the support of the Department of Justice, the development of some training opportunities, some tools for an array of criminal justice professionals. We've seen the development of more services. Some communities have specialized law enforcement units or have special training for law enforcement. Early Illinois, with their elder services officers, was doing training for law enforcement. And again, special prosecution units, there are a couple very well-known ones, San Diego, New York, Kings County, Seattle, Washington, some others. But the reality is that in most areas of the country, not only do you not have a specialized unit in your prosecutor's office, you're lucky if you have anybody in your prosecutor's office who knows anything about elder abuse, gets it at all, cares about it, and that's a huge problem. We do see law enforcement prosecutors and others participating in multidisciplinary team opportunities, either a DV or family violence coordinating council or more specialized elder abuse multidisciplinary teams, including the forensic centers such as in Orange County, Illinois, Orange County, California, Los Angeles, where there is some research now, a study that just came out by Kate Wilbur, funded by the National Institute of Justice, that showed that cases that were reviewed by the Forensic Center had 10 times a greater likelihood of being presented to the district attorney than cases that had not been reviewed. I think that is the first and only research of that type on certainly elder abuse multidisciplinary teams, and I'm not that familiar with much on other types of multidisciplinary teams either, so great opportunity for research there. We have seen talk of criminalizing activity, certainly the approach now to elder abuse as being a crime, not just an adult protective services problem, a family problem, a social services problem, is a relatively new development. And we always talk about having tougher penalties. Prosecutors are more likely to pay attention to these cases if they are felony rather than misdemeanors, and that's an important factor that we need to consider. There are some judicial resources and initiatives going on. Long ago, when I started doing elder abuse work 20 years ago now, we developed guidelines for state courts handling cases involving elder abuse. The Florida International University adapted the Bureau of Justice Assistance's trial court standards for elder abuse cases as well as some other types. We did some training and developed curricula that a few states adapted. More recently, the National Center for State Courts has had funding to develop a center on elders and the courts and has developed some online curricula and toolkits, including bench cards and other really wonderful resources. And again, as I mentioned, we have seen family violence and domestic violence coordinating councils to some extent recognize elder abuse as a problem that's relevant to those two issues and include people who are concerned with elder abuse on them. And we've begun to see the development of what we call court-focused elder abuse initiatives. The Elder Protection Court, Dan mentioned they had an Elder Protection Order project. I don't know, Dan, if you meant in Brooklyn or if you guys have also developed another one. But there's one in Brooklyn, New York, and Louisville, Kentucky, where older folks can appear telephonically, again, rather than go sit at the courthouse on the hard bench for hours trying to get a protection order. And then there are two elder justice centers in Florida that, in a variety of different ways, try to help detect when a victim of elder abuse has come into the courthouse and tries to help them work through the system, get them referred to other resources, and so forth. For civil lawyers, that's that's sort of the newer frontier in the legal system. There has been less attention paid for them. There are fewer resources. There is training sporadically. Certainly the ABA has done and would like to do more training. Different entities of the ABA, including ours, do continuing legal education programs. The National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys does some programs at some of its conferences. The Department of Justice is developing, just starting to develop, a 6-hour online curriculum on elder abuse for legal services attorneys, the folks who don't charge for their services and can't pay for expensive programs. We have seen more development of expertise in programs, but there's really a long way to go for that. And even for the Older Americans Act funded legal aid programs and those funded by the Legal Services Corporation, they have so many challenging issues coming in front of them, particularly in bad economic times, that elder abuse is just really not usually a priority to them. There are a few programs, but not very many of them. And they are, because civil lawyers cost so much money, and it's so difficult for victims, particularly financial exploitation victims, to afford a civil attorney, that the free folks, the free legal aid folks, are really the last and often the only resort. So it's more critical that they do consider this a priority and understand it and try to find it, because that's what it takes, I think, as Ron's point about seeing more cases at Wells Fargo is demonstrating. If you look for it, you see it. And we also need to be getting civil lawyers, whether those who charge for their services or those who don't, more involved in multidisciplinary team efforts, coordinating counsel type efforts, because they bring a wealth of knowledge to the table and are critical for helping to resolve the needs of victims. Again, the criminal justice system really doesn't care about the needs of victims. It's about protecting them to some extent from further abuse, protecting community as a whole from what those perpetrators are doing, but not about really meeting the needs of the victims. And civil law can help in that regard. And they also can bring a wealth of knowledge about the legislative advocacy that is necessary. So I just very quickly want to highlight a couple gaps that I hope the discussion group will talk about. The lack of technical assistance as well as training, and I think when you just look at what the Violence Against Women Act has supported for technical assistance and training for civil lawyers as well as the criminal justice system as well as judges on domestic violence, and then what's going in the elder abuse field is horrifying. And that makes a huge difference, I think. We've talked now for a day and a half about capacity assessment, so I won't talk much more about it other than to say it's an issue across the board. It's not just whether adult protective services can go in and provide services and help somebody. It's whether that person has the ability then to make a power of attorney or to revoke a power of attorney or to testify at trial, or whether the gift that the grandson says was made was done knowingly. And we can't tweeze out capacity from undue influence altogether. Undue influence is sort of, I think, the, gorilla, the whatever acronym, I want to use there, but it's a huge issue, and I think that the more we learn about it, the more we see it again, and that it's really a much bigger phenomenon than we've recognized in the past, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. I talked about the lack of affordable and high-quality legal services. Information sharing is definitely a barrier. There are legal barriers to our ability to share information with each other and collaborate with each other, and that's an issue to work on. Remedies, the lack of remedies are a huge issue. We have historically looked at guardianship as being an answer to elder abuse, and in some cases it is, in other cases it's the problem. We have historically taken the approach of let's remove the victim from the situation, not let's remove the perpetrator from the situation. There have been a lack of shelters and other resources to take victims to. The legal system is not real good at dealing with problems like this, and it's of course more complicated with elder abuse even than DV or child abuse because of the issues of capacity, of undue influence, of the rights of older people. So we're all going to have to work on that together, and having opportunities like this and minds from the new fish and minds from other programs and problems that have dealt with this is just huge. And of course, data and evaluation. I mean, thankfully, I haven't had to pound my head at this meeting like I usually do over how are we going to define elder abuse. I mean, we've talked about it, but we've moved beyond that to some extent. But it is a real issue in terms of what data we're able to collect and then whether we're able to evaluate any of the programs and interventions that we've talked about here. So thank you very much for asking me to talk today.
This is indeed a terrific panel. I think we'll need to save questions and answers for either the breakouts or grab these folks at lunch. And in terms of your comments, save them for the small group discussions is a way to get some of your ideas going forward, and also the ways forward discussion later on this afternoon. And for all of the speakers, both this panel and both days, many of you referred to toolkits, to training materials, to various wonderful publications. And one of the things is that the written report that comes from this forum, that we have to be careful about what we cite as forum writers, because there's not been a review of the literature, there's not been a review of those toolkits by the IOM. But if you said it and we asked you to speak here, then we can include it as part of your contribution. So be sure that the staff gets that information so that we can incorporate it in the written report and in various ways on the website. So Dr. Dong, do you want to tell us where we're supposed to go next and when?
No, I want to thank the panels. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. So please grab your lunch in the room. For the healthcare, is going to stay in this room. Community is going to be in room 101, which is the overflow room. Financial will be in room 205 on the second floor, and legal will be on 213 on the second floor. There'll be maps in the meeting handouts, but this will be staff outside to guide you to where you go as well. Please bring your lunch. I understand that the breakout sessions, even though they're in separate settings, but they're all interconnected. So when you come back hope to get back at 2:15, you should give us about an hour and 15 minutes. If you get done early, you can skip the break, but if you can have the break. But if you don't get done early, feel free to use that 15 minutes extra time for break. But come back here at 2:15. Thank you.